Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Kaylee Batesman, the content director at She Can Code, and today the title for this episode is How I Built a Tech Business as a Female Founder. Now, we all know that women are still underrepresented in tech on the whole, but what about female founders? What more can be done to help female founders establish their own tech businesses? Luckily, I'm joined by one woman who has established her own tech business, Sarah Dowzell, co-founder of Natural HR, and she's here today. She's going to share her own journey and advice with us. Sarah, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. I know you are a super busy lady, and we want to hear all about your day and how you started a business. And we're going to kick off, if it's okay. Can we start with a bit of background about you?
Absolutely. So Sarah Dowzell, I live in the Midlands, as you can probably tell. 35, mum of two, and married to the co-founder of Natural HR. So we started the business together as husband and wife.
And how is that going as husband and wife owning a business?
Well, we've made it through from an idea, bootstrapping, investment, scaling up, all the way through to exit, and now into our brand new home. So it's been a hell of a journey, but we've got through it.
Good. And so one day were you just chatting and said, you know what, I think we should start a business? What on earth? How did the idea come about? What did you both do before?
So I always knew I wanted to go into business. That was my absolute goal in life in my late teens, to go into business. But when I met Jason, he was working in tech. I ended up actually with a cleaning business to start with. And it was through that business that everything was done on paper around employing people. So if we had a new staff member start, they would fill in a new starter form literally on paper to gather up all of their personal details. If they were going on holiday, they would put in a holiday request form. And then the big thing was around the hours that the cleaners worked to be able to pay them. So that was done on paper also, paper-based timesheets. I used to buy those, leave them at the location of each office that was being cleaned, and they would be posted back to me each week with the hours worked for the payroll. Quite often it would be I forgot to pop it in the post, or I'd get a text saying I've worked these hours, or a text saying I'm off sick. And it was all just, even as a micro business, having everything on paper, it wasn't great. And that's what we thought would be an idea to explore for Jason's tech background. He wanted to go into developing something himself, and I had this need to say, okay, what can we do here? And this was back in 2012. So today it's probably really easy to think, oh, there's technology that exists for that, but back then, software as a service, SaaS as we know it today, it just wasn't a thing. You could get a disk of software to install, and I think back to when I was at school and we did IT on learning how to build a Microsoft Access database or something. Gosh, it's many years ago. And that's how software used to look back then. It wasn't a great experience. So he created something initially for me to use around the hours that were worked, and records for people's employment. And it just grew from there, really, because that was, I guess, there was partly timing, because that was the time that actually tech then started to become a thing over the next few years, and businesses were looking to the cloud for their software needs. And I would speak to other small micro business owners, and they would say things like, oh, we use spreadsheets for this, or this is how we're running our holidays. And it was apparent that there was a need for something greater. So we just kept adding to what was a free tool initially when we put it online to start with. And it became Jason's hobby, and it was something that I helped support our free user base to use. And it reached a point where that many people signed up. We thought, actually, this has snowballed into something much bigger than what we'd imagined. And it was costing us money to host, secure. I was having to support customers using how do I use this software, that sort of thing. And we realized, actually, we've got something here. We need to monetize it and focus on how can we make this a business. And it was almost by accident that we then became a tech business, and the whole journey I've been on through that initial experience of finding a gap in the market and a business need.
Amazing. And you know what? I hear so many stories on here about how people get into tech, and I never know what people are going to say and how they fell in. And there's just you know, the conversations that happen where you eventually end up in the tech industry. I have heard a couple of ladies say, my husband worked in tech and I saw that that was a really good industry. I rarely speak to ladies who say we went into business together, so that's even nicer. But yeah, you're such a great example of a lady that kind of fell into the tech industry and, you know, didn't have to have a technical background, and just kind of, you know, just flourish from there, which is something that we really advocate at She Can Code, and something that we so love to hear. I suppose I wanted to ask you just quickly then, on not having a technical background, did you find that slightly daunting at first, or did you just think, you know, I actually, as part of our business, my husband does that, and there's lots of other things and lots of other roles that I need to do as part of our tech business that actually are not technical at all, which is also another misconception about coming into tech.
So in the early days, it was actually the commercial aspect of the business itself that I felt more insecure about than the tech. So Jason is a little bit older, had a corporate background, whereas I'm someone that's, you know, climbed through in life and made their way, because before the cleaning business, I started on a stock market, then I went self-employed, and then I ended up where I, you know, needed to be on that journey into creating something that was mine. And it used to be that I would feel, you know, I've not had that corporate background, I've not had the training that he's had, I've not had the leadership coaching, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable initially when we were raising investment and I was the only woman in the room and everyone was a lot older, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. He knows how to do this, he stands up and presents in front of people for a living. And it was actually that I felt more uncomfortable with to start with. Now, though, I'd walk in the room with my head held high, and I'd encourage, you know, any other young woman to do the same, because you just grow in confidence on that journey. The tech, you're right, though. Jason's background was tech. Mine was more business operations. I have a business degree as well as a HR background. So we naturally went into the roles that we do and have a background and expertise in. And I've probably never really thought, I'm not a techie, I don't really belong. I think it's really opened my eyes, having a tech business, how many different roles there are outside of developing software. So, you know, even supporting our customers, you need to understand our technology, through to, you know, designing the product, engaging with customers. We've always used our own software. That was something that I really think has helped us as a tech business. That the team use the software, it helps them when they're talking to prospects, customers, and it just became almost a focus on the software as opposed to tech.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear. So many of our members of our community always wonder about that. Do I have to be technical? Do I have to know all about software? Do I have to know how to code? And then actually, when you hear about the different roles in technology, as you said, there are so many that people don't even know about. And that's how Spilling the Tea came about, just dipping into different tech careers for more people to hear that what actually life is like working in the tech industry, and what you would actually be doing. I wanted to ask you about being an entrepreneur, because you had a business beforehand, and you know, do you think that that's for everybody? Do you think anyone can be an entrepreneur, and do you think you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit?
So I think, can anyone be an entrepreneur? Yes, but can you really go for it and succeed? I think that comes down to mindset. I think you've really got to have a mindset of wanting to do this. It's not a get rich quick type of thing, you know. I think it's really easily, particularly today, I'm not big into social media and influencing, but I can see how for the younger generation it looks like, you know, something quick and easy. It looks very glamorous. Actually building a business from scratch all the way through to exit is a long, hard slog. And it's not very rewarding in those early days. It's times where, you know, you go to bed at night, you carry it all in your head. You don't switch off from it, particularly when you're married to the other co-founder.
Yeah.
You go to bed having conversations, you get up and, your day starts with whatever it is that's on your mind about the business today. It becomes all-consuming. It is your life. So for me, I'd say I've found there's never really been a divide between personal life, business life. It's all just become one.
Yeah. Yeah. But so far, so good. So,
Yeah.
in terms of being a female founder, what has been your proudest moment so far? I mean, obviously you said you're in it for the long run, and it does take a while to get there. Are there any what is your proudest moment, or any moments throughout that you thought, you know what, actually this is going to work, we're going to do this?
I think initially when we raised our first round of investment back in 2015, it felt like that validation that it actually is a good business idea. We're onto something here. That was a proud moment. Opening our first office, taking on our first team member, all the way through to winning awards. Obviously, I've got to say exit is a proud moment because that was the ultimate goal. But I think there's lots of little steps on that journey, and you've really got to, I'd say my advice to anyone is, if you're in that journey, is actually step back and take stock and celebrate those little successes that you have along the way and recognise them.
Yeah, I suppose it's quite easy to get lost in that journey as well. And like you said, if it's every day and it's all consuming, I suppose it's quite easy to not take a step back and remember actually where we started, and to celebrate all those little things.
Absolutely. You can be so inwardly focused and all you think about is the problems in your business and the things that you need to fix. And actually you don't recognise, what's working well.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit earlier about when you went for investment and what that felt like, especially as a woman. Other challenges along the way. What challenges have you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I think investment was probably the first challenge for me. And, for me, it was really a confidence thing now looking back, because actually my knowledge would be the same knowledge that I have today, albeit, it's grown. My knowledge of what we were doing, why we were doing it, that there was a business need. It came from my own business needs. It was validated by other small business owners. I think it was overcoming that with the confidence that actually I do know what I'm talking about. I am competent in this area. Other challenges, I'd say finding the right team members with the right skills. That has been, people is a big part of every business. And that comes with its own sets of challenges, from hiring the right skills through to things that happen along the way, dynamics of team members, the culture of the business as you grow, that obviously changes, the pace of change in the business. Challenges managing different stakeholders. So we went through a number of investment rounds, and there's various different shareholders to navigate through that. So suddenly it wasn't just our decisions anymore, 100% ours, and we could do what we like. So I'd say that was a challenge that lots of businesses face when they do raise investment on that journey.
Yeah, I love the fact there is that you pointed out about staff and finding good talent. And I completely agree with that in terms of startups. And it's a conversation that we have often at She Can Code as well, about being a smaller company and finding people that are really interested in being part of your journey and your story, and really backing that, because those types of people, they're very, very different compared to people that want to work in a corporate. They like the day, so they want to kind of disappear into the corporate framework and just get on with their job. Whereas in a startup, there's just nowhere to hide. You start off with one small job, and that expands into everything because there's no one else there at that point. And as lovely as that can be, and you learn so many new skills that you wouldn't have learned at a corporate, sometimes that can be incredibly challenging. So have you found that type of thing when hiring staff? It takes a certain not a crazy person, but a certain type of person that wants to be part of a startup culture, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So yeah, in the early days, I remember looking for people that you feel are all rounders, they're going to get the sleeves rolled up, and as you start growing, you then start thinking, actually, I need someone who's done this before, who has that expertise that we need to bring into the business, and then made that mistake of thinking, oh, look at that person, look what they've done. You bring them into the business, and actually you take away that infrastructure around them, and they're not. You realize it's not them alone, it's everything around them. Yes, they might be absolutely brilliant at their job, but in an environment where they've got that structure and process in place, and
Yeah,
other team members to draw upon.
definitely.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
disruptive then, because you're back into that cycle of needing to hire again. You're doing the job while you're hiring again. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I personally love the startup environment. It's that you get to see something grow and somebody's story really take off, and it's so much easier to say, do you remember, last year when it was just like a couple of us and we grew to this, and then we moved offices several times, and
Yeah.
all of that is really lovely, and it's not for everybody. I was at a company for 6 years and we moved offices 8 times, and it was so much fun. But I also know a lot of the people there were quite unnerved by the whole thing. What, we're moving again? Oh, it's kind of just picking people that are up for being part of your journey is so important. Um, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about being an entrepreneur, because working for a startup is one thing, but being an entrepreneur is another. So, what are important skills to have as an entrepreneur, do you think?
I think you've got the technical skills. You need to understand your business. I am someone that would need a calculator to do what people could probably add up in the head. And I think that can put a lot of people off, because, finance is so important in business. But if you are like me and you find numbers daunting, it's about learning, how do I understand what this means? How do I understand this profit and loss in front of me? What's it telling me about my business? So employ people to do the jobs that you're lacking. So whether you're outsourcing your accountancy or you've got a management accountant in, but they might be doing the job, but make sure you understand the data that's being presented back to you, and understand where your business is at. Ultimately, as an entrepreneur, you're growing a business for a particular reason. Sales is important because you need that business growth to get anywhere. So, someone with, whether it's a commercial background or recognizing, actually, I'm not strong at selling, I need to bring someone in to do that. So being very aware of your own weaknesses as well, I'd say. But then aside from the technical things, I think there's a whole mindset piece, because actually it is very different to be an entrepreneur, and it's very lonely, and there's no one else that's going to get you through it. You've got to keep pushing yourself through it day after day. So 100%, what can you do to develop yourself as a person? That's what's going to get you through.
Yes, yeah, that's brilliant advice as well. About, you mentioned about being aware of your own weaknesses as well, because there is that thing about founders, and I'm assuming you've heard the expression founder syndrome, but there are some people who start businesses and then they almost can't relinquish the control, and as you said, finding good people to take over to do things that you can't do because you've identified your own weaknesses. You think, actually, I need a really strong team that know all the things that I don't know to be able to move this business forward, which is obviously how you've gone from strength to strength, just to realize that you don't need to know everything as well.
No, you don't, but it is hard. I've been there. I know that feeling. It feels stressful to delegate. You're scared, and you think of all these scenarios in your head. What happens to this? What happens to that? But you're just building yourself up and up to have more and more to do, and make the business less successful if you're not there.
Yes, yeah, and just strengthening it as you go. There have been many reports about female founders struggling to secure funding. You mentioned your own journey and challenges as well yourself. Do you have any tips or advice for this, or is there anything you wish somebody had told you back when you went for funding?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'd say I've been involved in a lot over the last few years. and I've been involved in report launches in Westminster about, what can we do at a government level? What change do we need? And I'd say the most interesting thing that really resonated with me a couple of years ago on one of the Female Founder Forum reports I attended was a statistic that found that 1 in 4 teenage girls couldn't name a female entrepreneur. And I just thought, how is that possible? Because I look back at my teens and it was when we had Dragon's Den coming out, The Apprentice starting on TV, and I could be like, oh, Karen Brady, Deborah Mead, and there were high profile women that were known. And I'm thinking, is it that life's moved on? Generations today are on social media. We're not connecting as female entrepreneurs with that audience. We're not there as I guess people to look up to, role models for these girls to see, actually I could have a really good career doing that. And is that stopping them coming forward and going down, even setting up a business before they even get to looking at investment? But you're right, there has been a lot of research in the same reports around the lack of funding that goes to female entrepreneurs compared to their male counterparts, particularly when we compare the UK to other countries. Role models is a big part of it, but I think, investment companies, the VCs, they're starting to realise that actually they need to look like approachable. I know certainly in the Midlands, when I speak with them, they're starting to look at how can they ensure that their workforce is representative, how can they ensure that they are reaching out to female entrepreneurs to understand their business ideas. So I think we're quite fortunate in the companies that I'm seeing, they're doing that in the area, but I think there's still a lot to do overall. And I think it's probably then, as a woman, it's hard because I had to make that choice as a woman. I'm taking on investment in my business. I can't have any more children because ultimately, when you're raising £250,000, it's not like raising millions of pounds and you can employ loads of people and take maternity leave as you might do in a normal job. You have to look at your life and decide, is this the journey that I want? Because it might be that I'm putting children off for a few years, or it might be like, I was quite fortunate because I knew I wanted to go in business. I had children, 2 boys quite young, but I'd envisaged a bigger family that I had, but I made that decision actually that journey and outcome is more important, and that was the decision I took.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Having that decision and being able to make that decision as well. And I love the fact that ties into those role models, because the more ladies that tell their stories and challenges like that, and what actually owning your own business, the reality of it, and even though now you're doing incredibly well, it's the reality as to what that is like and the hard decisions that you have to make personally and professionally to be able to get there. And for ladies to say that they can't even name a female entrepreneur, let alone really know in depth about their stories, it's just insane, really, that ladies, that people can't name one entrepreneur, or even the ones that are there. You only hear like the wonderful story. You see like sort of the Instagram life of somebody that's like they founded a big app and like sold their business and made millions. You only hear all of that stuff. You never hear of anything in between, and how they actually did it. So yeah, the more that female founders share their stories, the more the better, and hopefully that inspires more girls to think, actually I can do this. And I'm aware of what my journey would be like. There was that famous story of Martha Lane Fox when she went for funding, and she was launching lastminute.com, and she got turned down several times for funding for lastminute.com. And you think, like, now you think about it, you think how amazing, that she launched, that was one of her businesses and she sold it, but she got turned down several times, and not just for being a female, but you do think there are lots of female founders out there that just really struggled when they got started. which is a shame. And so you mentioned that you're working with government on some reports as well. And because I wanted to ask you a little bit about, do you think more could be done to help female founders? But it sounds like that's already on your mind anyway.
Yeah, so I don't personally. I do attend when the reports are launched in Westminster, and I certainly am very vocal on my views and sharing, things like that online. And the idea is that hopefully in doing that, it does facilitate change, looking at all party parliamentary groups, making sure that there is feedback going in from people like me and in terms of the challenges that are faced, what life's really like on the ground, that's going into people who are at the end of the day in government to represent us or making the laws that we hopefully abide by in the main.
Yes, and it's interesting as well that you want to go down that route, because so far all of your steps professionally have been kind of, I felt there was a need in my business, so I launched a business to close that gap. And actually you've even noticed that there is a need to help female founders, and you've moved forward to try and close that gap as well, which is it just seems far more genuine than somebody that is just trying to pull together a journey along the way. You've kind of always noticed a need for something and stepped into that. I suppose that's a quality of an entrepreneur, isn't it? You spot an opportunity and go for it.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, that certainly is my personal plan. I would love to do more in that area. And even that's something where I've thought a little bit like, that initial journey as an entrepreneur and a commercial person, or is this me? I'm very aware when I go down to Westminster that actually I don't sound quite like everyone else. When I talk, I become a little bit more aware of how I sound. And, that journey again is, I recognise that and think, actually, no, I had that feeling back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and look at me now. Actually, I do belong here. I've got something to say. I've had a very valid journey that will be reflective of many other women and the challenges that they faced. And we need to make sure that's raised, and we need to make sure that we're bringing the change that we want to see.
Yes, exactly. I love everything you just said there. I couldn't agree more. And as we said earlier, the more that people share those stories, and the more that people hear accents, and that there are lots of different ladies from lots of different backgrounds and walks of life, and the more that inspires other people to go for it. Because once you've always got those very senior ladies that are role models from all similar backgrounds, then it kind of you look and you think, what, I'm so far from that. I just could not move into something like that, or I just haven't got it in me to launch a business like you did, because you just cannot relate to some of those ladies, as wonderful as they are. I can't see it. But the more that people share those stories, that just really inspires other people to think, what, actually I could give that a go. Baby steps, but I could give that a go. We're going to talk a little bit about advice. Do you have any advice for anyone thinking about launching a business? And this is that anything you wish somebody had told you before you went into launching your own business?
Well, firstly, you can do it. You can do this. That is the biggest thing that I think stops people. Go and look in the mirror and tell yourself you can do this, and really believe it to start with. But you've got to have a plan. Yes, we did things where, you kind of fall into it, but actually you can't keep operating like that. You need to come up with a plan. Are you hitting that plan? Do you need to take a different direction? That's my biggest, I'd say, advice, that the confidence to do it, and the actually taking a logical view then as you're doing it. It might be something that you absolutely love and really enjoy, but is it what you want to be doing with your life? If you're a serious entrepreneur wanting to make money at this, are you on the right path? Or actually, is it just a hobby that you really enjoy, and you're not actually looking for that full journey of scaling up a business through to exit, but you found something that you want to do with your life?
Yeah. And when you came up with that plan, and you were finding that advice to change directions, did you call upon any networks for that, or did you not realize at the time, perhaps when you were quite new in launching your own business, that there are support groups out there? How did you do that? Did you go to meetups, or what was that like?
That's an interesting question, because I'd say it's really from when I was 21 years old that I became what I would call an entrepreneur, how I've recognized today that term. And it meant that I didn't have any friends because suddenly I wasn't going out. My life had taken a very different direction and my business came first. So it was very lonely and I didn't really know where to find people like me. I didn't really have my people.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time, never really exploring that. And I am a very social person. I do like going out, making connections. And I did try, particularly because we're in Birmingham city centre, there are events on. And when I started going to a few things, I just felt like I didn't really belong. It didn't feel right. I felt that there was a lot for very early stage startup businesses, particularly businesses where, people are perhaps doing it more as a sideline, a hobby, an interest. And I felt like, actually, I've got this really big idea here. This is how am I going to get around people that are on that same journey? And it took quite a few years to do that. It wasn't until I became part of a local female entrepreneur network in Birmingham that I actually then found my people. And once I was in that room with women that are like me, running their own businesses, and we meet once a month. Before COVID, would meet face to face. Obviously, we went a bit more, Teamsy during COVID, but we still try and meet every quarter or so and socialise. Having that network has been invaluable, and actually, as part of that, one of the first events I remember attending as that group was forming was Jenny Campbell was a speaker at the event, and she came to speak to the Female Entrepreneur Network. And she said, you cannot be an island when you're in business. And I thought, that's me. I was an island because, I didn't have anyone outside of my husband, the kids, and the business. That was it. I was the island. And it made me realise once I was around people having conversations like this, getting on a call, you can be vulnerable, you're in a safe place, you're speaking to ladies that have just had someone walk out and they don't know what to do in their team, through to, a customer kicking off about something that's about to blow up into a legal situation. Actually, I'm now having conversations that I recognise and I feel part of, and, we're there to support each other, and you might not always have had that experience, but you can learn from someone else's, or you're a shoulder to cry on if someone's really having a tough time. You can say, well, actually, I had this happen. This is how I dealt with it. What about if I put you in touch with this person? That's been absolutely invaluable to me, finding people on a similar journey. But I'd say it's difficult getting there because, it's not like there's so many different groups now for business, and you don't really know whether it's the sort of thing you're looking for when you go along. It is hard to do, but I'd say once you start connecting with people in your industry and locally in your area doing similar things, make the effort, go grab a coffee with them, look to form a group together. That's ultimately what we did. We formed a group together and became that network, and we keep going now with that.
Yes, and oh gosh, the power of a community. And our community tells us a similar story. When you just meet somebody who is just like you and they say something and you immediately think, I thought I was the only one that was feeling that way. And as an entrepreneur, that must have been a brilliant feeling, just to hear somebody else say, you know what, we're having a similar problem. You must have had those moments where you kind of think, am I going crazy? Is it just me? And then to hear from somebody else, I mean, that must have been a bit of a light bulb moment where you're like, oh, this is not just me.
Yeah, I think, you just become so focused on your business. You can't see beyond your own business, and you focus almost on the negatives and don't realize that actually all the other businesses around you have got their own unique challenges and
Yeah.
problems. every
Yeah, because on
day.
the surface, everyone else looks
Yeah,
fabulous. They're looking, they're gliding along like a swan, and under the pond, their legs are going, and they're all having the same problems as you. But people don't share that, do they? Obviously, because they're building a brand and building their business. But to hear about that, think actually, you know what, we're doing something similar, and we will get there, and you have got there. But just to hear that, it's not just you. And I suppose also comparing yourself as well, because as you said, you're going to be thinking of all the negatives, and every day that's going to be part of your life, and you'll be thinking, no, actually we need to do this, or we haven't done this. And actually to hear other people, you might have had that thought at some point, surely, where you thought, actually we're not that bad.
yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, just to share stories is invaluable. I have one last question. We're almost out of time. What is next for Natural HR? What are your plans next? What do you envision?
So we were acquired back in March earlier this year, and the plan at the moment is integrating the two software products. So we're primarily a HR software tool. Our acquirer, they have a suite of products, but they're primarily known for their payroll. So at the moment, the focus is very much on bringing the two together. So that's integrating both the business but also the technology into the new, what would be the flagship product going forward into the future. And that's really nice to know that I've created something that's going to live on. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And a new chapter, and something new for your journey, for you and your husband. How does your husband feel about being a founder? Was he a founder before? You said he worked in he had the corporate training, so that must have been quite new for him as well.
Yeah, he'd done a few little things in life. He was around when, eBay was becoming a thing and all that. So he'd done a
Yeah.
few little online things, but mainly his corporate career in tech was his main background. But he'd always wanted to go into business too. So actually it's probably a whole story of how when we met. We met specifically because I went online looking for someone to go into business with. That was basically the dating profile, was essentially a job description. You have to be looking to go into business. You have to have family values. You have to want to create something and have some get up and go and vision in life. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for.
Oh, amazing. Well, I haven't heard a story like that before. Um, but it's good to hear that it has been successful for both of you. And we would love to have you back at some stage to hear about Natural HR's progression, and how you're flourishing as a business and also as a female founder. So Sarah, we're already out of time. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to hear all about your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely to share.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners, as always, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.